Remember how transistors used to be 1 centimeter in length in the 1960s?
Yeah.
Well, now ASML makes them at 3 nanometers, about the same size as a strand of DNA. This invention put ASML so far ahead of its competition.
How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We have a pretty good one today. This one's called "The Netherlands is Controlling China and Trying to Take Over the World." Very interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of global events taking place these days. This is a little bit different than what I would normally do on my channel. If you're not familiar with my channel and you're new here, normally I would do like reactions to different countries. A lot of the stuff is the Netherlands, just trying to learn about the world, history stuff, ways that that country's different to America, stuff like that. Usually not so political, but I do a lot of reactions to the Netherlands kind of stuff. This one seems very interesting. The Netherlands is controlling China and trying to take over the world economy. Let's see what it's all about. The original channel is called Jack Chapel. This was posted a month ago. And, there will be links to the original video in the description section down below. So make sure you go check that out. And we're going to jump into it and find out what's going on with this.
This is the town of Veldhoven in the Netherlands. It's a fairly modest town with a population of about 45,000 people. But what if I told you that the entire world economy is based around this town? Because what is happening here in Veldhoven has been catching the attention of the world's superpowers. In fact, something that is happening here quietly in the background just might dramatically change the world for the better of humanity. It might cause a full economic collapse, or maybe, just maybe, it might make an old empire rise once again.
Hey.
This is the Rotte River. Around the year 980, a few dozen people lived here along this river. However, over the next few hundred years, those few dozen people grew into a village with over 500 people. But just as the village seemed to be reaching new heights, a massive flood of the river came and wiped out most of the infrastructure. And for the next 100 years, because of the flooding, this area did not recover. Little did everyone know at the time that this area would become one of the most important economic project areas in history.
Why? I mean, right? I mean, obviously we're about to find out, but so many questions already. What exactly is so special about this spot? I mean, I guess it's a river, so you have access to more trade routes, right? You can get in and out with boats and cargo ships or something. I don't know.
In the mid-1200s, the Rotte River had a dam built along it which helped to reclaim a lot of the flooded land that the river destroyed a century earlier. Soon after, King William IV of Holland officially made the village a part of Holland and named it Rotterdam.
Okay, I see now. Rotterdam. Yeah, that's certainly an important part. And it definitely would be for trade routes, because obviously that's the third largest shipping port in the world, the largest in Europe.
After the river and the dam, which allowed the village to exist. King William then announced a canal project for Rotterdam, which would allow ships to enter and leave the city fairly easily. And it was this canal project which would accidentally change the world as we know it today. You see, the canal in the 1300s did help bolster the local economy of Rotterdam, but at the time, ship technology and international trade were pretty limited. So, for the time being, this port and canal were pretty much only used for trade between nearby countries. But then a strange thing happened. A race to
But the pin is on Amsterdam, not even Rotterdam. That's not even, I mean, in all fairness, right?
Countries. But then a strange thing happened. A race to become the new great empire of the world was underway. Spain, Portugal, and Britain all began investing in new ship technologies to expand their empires throughout the world. And over the next several centuries, globalization and colonization became rampant throughout the world. And all of a sudden, because Rotterdam was so close to all of these empires, the port of Rotterdam became one of the largest trading hubs in the world. However, something else started happening. You see, in the 1600s, as other empires like the British, Spanish, and Portuguese were focused on expanding their empire and seeing how much land they could conquer, the Dutch focused on controlling a few select countries. They created trading posts around the world, they had a few select areas of resource exploitation, they created some forts, and they did all of this rather than just trying to expand their empire to cover as much land as possible. But also during this time, the Netherlands transitioned their economic policy towards having free markets, property rights for all, and they significantly increased their investments into agriculture and just general technology research. And
So yeah, but then the agriculture, there's a whole issue with that, right? The farmers' protests and stuff. So yeah, so they definitely had a different approach than the British Empire, um, you know. But which approach was better? I don't know. I mean, the British Empire is more known for stuff. The Dutch did a lot of stuff that's kind of seems like it's been swept under the rug, or they got not the level of appreciation that they should have got for it. Like starting New York, it was originally called New Amsterdam, right? But a lot of times the British people would get the claim to that, not the claim, but like a lot of people would think that it was British, right? Because of the British name, New York, and this and that. But it's not really the case.
because of all of this, from the ports to the trading posts to the new economic policy, the Netherlands soon became known as the Dutch Empire. Now, the Dutch Empire at the time had a crazy control over global trade. They were also able to dictate which nations were able to have access to key resources like spices, rye, and luxuries. In fact, by 1670, half of all European trade came from Dutch ships and flowed through the ports of Rotterdam and Amsterdam. Think about that.
Wow.
At the time of some of the largest empires in history, the Netherlands, who had a population of only about 2 million people at the time, dominated world trade. And I know what you're probably asking. What happened to this trade empire? Well, it actually never really went anywhere. You see,
Didn't it turn into like the stock market or something? Like
even
part of
after
it?
the decolonization of its empire, the Dutch quietly have been one of the biggest trading nations in the world. If you were to take a look at the top exporters of goods in the world, you would see something that might catch your eye. Well, the top exporters may seem obvious, as they are China, the United States, Germany, and Japan. Those nations have been the king of exports for decades, and they all have very large populations, so that all makes sense. But who do you think is the next largest exporter of goods? Is it an old power like the UK or France? How about a large populous country like Brazil or India? Maybe it's an upcoming manufacturing powerhouse like Indonesia? Well, as it turns out, the Netherlands is still one of the top exporters of goods in the world.
And a lot of that's flowers, I think, and just like produce, I believe.
Despite having a population of only 19 million people today, the Dutch are still vital to global trade, and for more reasons than you might think. You see, the port of Rotterdam is still the busiest port in Europe and the second busiest port outside of Asia. European trade still flows through the port of Rotterdam in the same way that it has since the peak of the Dutch Empire. But there is something that happened recently which may be able to show just how strong the Netherlands is in regard to its power. You see, in 1984, a company called Advanced Semiconductor Material Lithography opened its doors. The company was started as a joint venture between two other Dutch companies called ASM International and Philips, and eventually
Yeah, so this is the company I believe that makes the microchips for the world, pretty much. The machine that makes the microchips.
this company set its headquarters to the town of Veldhoven in the Netherlands. Now, this company's main purpose at the time was to create the equipment that creates computer chips. Essentially, they build the tools for which other companies used to make the computer chips. And then those companies would send those chips to companies like Apple, where they would go and eventually make computers that would change the world. Essentially, if you wanted to make a computer, it all started with ASML. But for a while, ASML was just one small player in a large market of equipment makers. Then something miraculous happened for the company. You see, computer chips have become a lot more complicated to make over the last 60 years, so not every company can do it. A computer is mostly made of things called transistors, and they used to be about 1 centimeter in length, or about the same size as a pea. But over the course of the last 6 decades, transistors got smaller and smaller, which made computers more efficient every single year. That's actually where the term Moore's Law comes from. Essentially, our computing power has grown so quick only because we have been able to make transistors smaller. But anyways, researchers from the United States Department of Energy noticed in the late 1990s that eventually Moore's Law would stop, because we couldn't make chips any smaller. Therefore, computing power would stop getting better over time.
Or so they thought. Right? Is that where that part comes in, or so they thought?
And this was a pretty big problem. So the researchers at the Department of Energy got to work, and eventually they discovered a new way to make computer chips called extreme ultraviolet lithography. Essentially, it was an extremely complicated and theoretical way to make a computer chip, but on paper it seemed to work. And strangely enough, only one company checked all the boxes for licensing, creating, testing, and building this new technology. And that company
was ASMLR or whatever? ASML?
Was ASML. So from the early 2000s until 2018, ASML kept refining and perfecting this technology. And then a breakthrough happened in 2018. ASML successfully produced the best computer chip making machine in the world by a landslide. Remember how transistors used to be 1 centimeter in length in the 1960s?
Yeah.
Well, now ASML makes them at 3 nanometers, about the same size as a strand of DNA. This invention put ASML so far ahead of its competition.
Wow, the same size as a strand of DNA. That is insane.
That some experts have suggested that the next closest competitor is about 5 years behind ASML, but most of its competitors are actually 10 years behind in terms of their chip making ability. This success and revolutionary technology has given ASML one of the first new monopolies of the modern era. Essentially, they have full control over who is able to get and utilize the newest chip-making technology. And that is why ASML is under the spotlight right now for good and bad reasons. One positive thing that ASML has seen is that since 2018, its stock price has risen by well over 300%, making it one of the most valuable tech companies in the world.
Not an investment channel at all, guys, but maybe now you want to invest in some ASML stock. Who knows, right?
And the most valuable tech company in Europe. It has also been able to grow quickly as it took advantage of the global chip shortage that started in 2020 that has been persisting ever since. However, ASML, as you might have assumed, is actually in the middle of a geopolitical and technological war between two superpowers, the USA and China. You see, having the ability to make the best computer chips in the world also means you probably have a significant edge over other nations in terms of technological and economic power. If one nation is an entire generation behind in terms of technological capabilities, then its economy and advancements in things like AI, military tech, productivity, and efficiency will also lag behind, therefore making that country less of a threat. And that is a key reason why the United States recently enacted a deal with the Netherlands and Japan to limit China's ability to access any advanced chip-making technology. And even though this deal seemed to have taken a backseat to a lot of other news stories in the last week, it will be one of the most impactful stories of this year. You see, this deal is essentially a way to try to keep China's technology one generation behind the Western world. And it also means that large corporations who want to use newer computer chips must set up their factories anywhere outside of China. However, this deal was seen coming by China a few years in advance, which is why China had already begun research and development into their own chip-making technology. But many experts believe that they could be a decade away or more from catching up to the Netherlands.
And see, even then, it's like, okay, they take a decade to get to where the Netherlands is at right now with it, right? But that also gives the Netherlands another decade to increase their capabilities even more. So even if they catch up, and they get up here where the Netherlands is, it don't matter because Netherlands is going to be back up here and they're still going to be behind. They might close the gap by 5 years instead of 10, but it's still going to be a gap. It's still going to be far off before that happens, I believe, before they're caught up.
And ASML. But still, in response to the Netherlands' trade deal with USA and Japan, China's foreign minister responded by saying, "Such bullying and hegemonic practices seriously violate market rules and disrupt the international trade order." And to top things off, the United States announced a $76 billion program to bring back chip manufacturers to the United States in hopes of decreasing its reliance upon foreign nations like China for not just its computer chips, but for all sorts of technology. And almost immediately after that announcement, chip makers from all over the world began announcing major projects in the United States, many of whom will be using ASML's newest technology. And so, when you think about it, ASML is really the key player in the computer chip war between the United States and China, as ASML gets
Wow.
to decide who gets the most advanced chips, and as of right now, they are siding with the United States.
Well, it's a good thing I'm on the winning side of that battle. Um, you know, I guess it doesn't affect me personally. I mean, maybe it does. I mean, it probably does more than I would realize, right? Yeah, I don't know. The United States kind of sucks in a lot of regards, but in all fairness, I feel like I'd rather be here than China. So there's that.
Now, if you remember at the beginning of the video how we were talking about ports and trade, there is one important thing that China is doing to counteract at least some of these trade deals against them.
Dun dun
You see,
dun.
the Netherlands may side with the United States on chip making, but they also seem to be siding with China in regards to shipping. That's because the port of Rotterdam gets about 50% of its business from China. They've also taken large investments from Costco, the Chinese shipping company, and essentially China considers the port of Rotterdam as a key part of its new Silk Road, as they try to gain more control over the most important port in Europe. So let's
That's interesting. Like a new Silk Road, which is, you've heard of it. Maybe I could do a video reaction on the Silk Road just to learn a little bit more about it. That'd be pretty interesting. But a modern day kind of Silk Road situation, I could see that.
think about this. Who would have thought that the battleground between China and the United States might actually be taking place in the Netherlands? And not necessarily
Right.
just in the Netherlands, but a small town of Veldhoven in the Netherlands. A town with just 45,000 people where 1/3 of them work for ASML may have the most
Wow.
sway in deciding the future superpowers of the world. Whether it's controlling them through technology or trade, the Netherlands and the town of Veldhoven has once again created a secret superpower on the world stage.
All right. So Veldhoven, here we go. It's actually not by Rotterdam at all. Veldhoven is down here, huh? That looks like more than 45,000 people. It's a pretty good size. Oh, it's by Eindhoven. Okay. Similar name. So it's like a suburb of Eindhoven. I see. Where's the ASML place? Where's this at? Global headquarters. Oh, right over here. That's nuts. The only little mini skyscraper in the area, huh? Very cool, guys. Well, anyways, if you like that video, hit like, hit subscribe, and have a super fun, awesome day.